What happens when a beloved television star's carefully guarded life is ripped open live on daytime TV? What erupts when years of simmering pressure finally snap into a public scene nobody expected? Today, we dig into one of the most jaw-dropping moments in recent talk show history. David Boreanaz, the actor who stole hearts first as a brooding vampire and later as the grounded FBI agent Booth, sitting across from Kelly Clarkson as a routine chat turns into a blistering, unresolved confrontation that ends with him storming off her set. Before we jump in, hit subscribe and drop your theory in the comments. What do you think? Lit the fuse. Kelly's show had been on a roll. Warm reviews, steady ratings, a reputation for coaxing guests into unexpectedly candid moments. Her relaxed conversational style made even the most idiot-schooled celebrities feel safe enough to lower their guard. David arrived as part of a promo tour for his new project. The warm applause, the handshakes, the production team's usual prep all suggested a smooth, scripted appearance. Kelly opened with that trademark burst of energy, greeting him like an old friend while the audience cheered. He took the guest chair with the practiced poise of someone who's spent decades in front of cameras. The interview began the way countless rehearsed TV conversations do. Flattering, familiar, easy. Kelly asked about David's transition from brooding, immortal anti-hero to the very human FBI agent the audience had come to love, an arc he'd discussed dozens of times. David's answers were polished, grateful, and gracious. The right mix of humility and charm that keeps fans satisfied and press happy. I've always been fascinated by actors who completely reinvent themselves between roles, Kelly said, leaning in. How do you switch from centuries of guilt and redemption to grounded, everyday emotional work? David smiled, media training glassy but effective, and described the mental shift in calm, measured terms, different worlds, different instincts, the craft of listening to a role. Kelly steered into territory guaranteed to please viewers. On-screen chemistry. Fans were obsessive about the electric moments he'd shared with coasters. She mentioned fan forums and viral threads that parsed every glance. The mood in David's expression changed just a touch, a tightening around the eyes. The polite stiffening of someone used to keeping certain things private. Fan communities can be intense, he answered, the warmth in his voice cooling fractionally. He credited directors, rehearsal, and committed scene partners, Sarah Michelle Gellar and Emily Deschanel, for the magic. Treating intimacy as craft rather than confession. Kelly, buoyed by curiosity and the momentum of the audience's interest, pressed on, spending all those hours creating intimate scenes. Building those emotional connections, doesn't that bleed into the personal? The studio leaned forward with her. The air in the room shifted. What had been light and promotional acquired a sharper edge. David's posture straightened. His smile, which had been effortless moments before, started to resemble something carefully held in place. It's vital to keep professional boundaries, he said, deliberate and cool. Those relationships are about serving the story and the characters. Kelly, sensing a crack in the veneer, pushed a little harder, not maliciously, but with the insistence of an interviewer who knows a reveal when she smells one. Come on, David, she said, softer now, but direct. You're human, asterisk, all that intensity, those long hours. Those deeply emotional scenes. Kelly pressed gently. Surely there must have been moments where the line between character and self blurred. Fans certainly thought they saw chemistry that went beyond the script. The air in the studio seemed to cool instantly. David's expression hardened. I'm not sure what you're suggesting, Kelly, he said slowly, his voice clipped, but I think you're stepping into territory that isn't really appropriate for this conversation. Kelly blinked, genuinely surprised by the edge in his tone. Oh, I didn't mean anything negative at all, she assured, her smile tight. I'm just saying you're such a gifted actor. You made those relationships feel so authentic that people are still talking about them years later. Thank you, David replied, but the sharpness in his voice made the audience shift uneasily. Though I think we should probably move on to my current projects, rather than dissecting my past working relationships. Kelly, mistaking his irritation for modesty, pressed on with cheer. But fans love hearing the behind-the-scenes stories. I actually read some interviews with your Bones coasters, and Emily Deschanel said some really lovely things about your work together. She mentioned how you'd sometimes stay after wrap to rehearse emotional scenes. David's jaw tightened visibly. Emily is a consummate professional, he said carefully. And yes, we worked hard to make the character's relationship believable. That's what actors do. Of course, Kelly nodded eagerly, missing the warning in his tone. But she also mentioned something fascinating about how you prepared for romantic scenes. She said you had a very particular method, something about finding a genuine connection with your scene partner before shooting. The color drained from David's face. Off camera, his publicist shifted in alarm, making small, urgent gestures to change the subject. I think Emily might be misremembering some things, David said tightly. We should really stay focused on why I'm here today. But Kelly leaned forward, convinced she was uncovering gold. Oh, I don't think she misremembered at all. She was very specific. She said you told her the key to authentic chemistry was finding something real to connect with in your partner, something honest to draw on. David's hands gripped the arms of his chair until his knuckles whitened. His voice came low, dangerous. Kelly, I need you to stop. Right now. You're twisting something completely innocent into something it's not. I'm not twisting anything. Kelly protested, confusion flashing across her face. I'm quoting your co-star, and she meant it as a compliment to your dedication. Dedication to the craft. David repeated, his voice a razor's edge. Is that what we're calling it now? The audience had fallen utterly silent, the tension suffocating. Kelly's producers waved frantically from off stage, but Kelly was locked on David, still trying to bridge the growing rift. David, I think we've had a miscommunication. I was simply highlighting your professionalism and the respect your colleagues have for you by dragging private conversations into the spotlight. David snapped, his composure cracking, by implying there was something inappropriate in how I do my job. I never implied anything inappropriate, Kelly insisted, her own voice rising. I was talking about acting technique. About your process. David gave a harsh, disbelieving laugh. Process. Do you have any idea what it's like to have every interaction you've ever had torn apart for gossip? To have people searching for scandal where none exists? That's not what I was doing, Kelly countered firmly. I was celebrating your work. Celebrating? David shot back, shaking his head. His voice climbed, sharp with anger. Let me tell you about authentic connection. It's about trust, about knowing your partner will be there when you're vulnerable, when you're carrying raw emotion. It's not fodder for gossip. It's not a juicy story for people to dissect. Kelly hesitated, thrown by the force of his words. David, I think you're reading something into my question that wasn't there. I respect you and your work. Respect. David's voice cut like glass now, his facade gone. You think it's respect to take something private, something sacred between colleagues, and twist it into a spectacle for your audience. You call this respect. David's voice cut like a blade. You're sitting here implying that my relationships with my co-stars were somehow inappropriate. I never said anything was inappropriate, Kelly countered quickly, but David wasn't listening anymore. His eyes burned with frustration. You know what the real problem is, Kelly? He said, his words laced with venom. You came in with a story already written in your head. You're twisting everything I say to fit your narrative. You don't care about the truth. You care about drama, speculation, gossip. That's what gets people talking. Kelly's composure cracked, her voice tightening. That is absolutely not true. I pride myself on treating my guests with respect. If you think I misrepresented something, then set the record straight. Tell me what really happened. What really happened? David snapped, surging to his feet so fast his mic pack nearly tore free. The sudden movement jolted the audience into silence. What happened is, I worked my ass off for over a decade to bring complex characters to life, to tell stories that mattered, and now I'm sitting here defending myself against cheap insinuations dressed up as questions. The studio air was thick, every camera hum amplified in the silence. Kelly stayed seated, her face stunned but resolute. David, please, sit down. We can talk this through. I clearly misunderstood something, and I want to make it right. Make it right. David's voice shook with contained fury. If you wanted to make it right, maybe you should have done proper research instead of leaning on gossip and half-remembered quotes ripped out of context. Kelly rose from her chair to now, her patience unraveling. David, I did do my research. I spent hours preparing, reading your interviews, watching your appearances, talking to people who've worked with you. Everything I brought up came from legitimate sources. Legitimate sources. David laughed bitterly. You mean tabloid soundbites and quotes twisted out of shape after being recycled a dozen times? That's your idea of legitimate? I call it thorough preparation. Kelly shot back, her warmth gone, her tone steely. And honestly, David, the way you're reacting makes me wonder if there's something you're trying to hide. Because an innocent professional relationship shouldn't provoke this kind of response. The words hit David like a physical strike. His color drained. His voice dropped to a dangerous hush. Did you just accuse me on live television of hiding something inappropriate? Kelly faltered, realizing she'd stepped too far, but it was too late to walk it back gracefully. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just pointing out that your reaction feels disproportionate. David took a slow, deliberate step toward her chair, his presence suddenly overwhelming under the studio lights. You want to talk about disproportionate, Kelly? Disproportionate is having to defend your integrity against baseless and disproportionate is being ambushed with inflammatory questions dressed up as casual conversation. No one ambushed you, Kelly said firmly, holding her ground, though her voice trembled. These were legitimate questions about your career and your working relationships. If you can't handle that level of scrutiny, maybe you shouldn't be doing press. David stared at her, his chest rising and falling with restrained fury. Finally, he nodded, a cold smile on his lips. You know what, Kelly? You're right. I shouldn't be doing press, not here. Not with someone who thinks ambush journalism passes for entertainment. It's not ambush journalism, Kelly protested, her voice rising in frustration. but David was already moving toward the edge of the stage, his back rigid with fury. Halfway there, he stopped and turned, glaring at her one last time. "Tell me something, Kelly asterisk, when you were preparing for this interview. When you were digging through all those so-called legitimate sources," David said, his voice trembling with controlled fury. "Did it ever occur to you that the people you're dissecting are real human beings, with real feelings, that your entertainment comes at the expense of someone else's reputation, someone else's peace of mind?" Kelly's face softened. "David, that was never my intention. I respect you enormously, both as an actor and as a person. If I've hurt you, that was never my goal. Your intention doesn't matter." David cut in coldly. "The damage is already done. You've thrown insinuations into the world, and now they'll live forever. People won't remember context, Kelly. They'll just remember the doubt. And that's on you." "They weren't accusations," Kelly insisted, leaning forward, her voice straining to stay calm. "David, please sit back down. Let's clear this up. Give me a chance to explain what I really meant." David shook his head slowly. Bitter disappointment etched into his expression. "You know what the saddest part is? I came here because I respected your show. I thought you were different, that you cared about real conversations instead of cheap controversy. Turns out I was wrong." The sting of his words showed on Kelly's face. She steadied herself. "You weren't wrong, David. That is what this show is about. But sometimes conversations take unexpected turns. Sometimes difficult topics come up, and we have to face them." "Difficult topics," David repeated with a laugh that held no humor. "Is that what we're calling character assassination now? Let's get something straight. Kelly, my relationships with my co-stars have always been professional, always. The chemistry you saw on screen came from talent and hard work, not some salacious story you think you've uncovered. I never suggested anything inappropriate." Kelly pushed back, though even she could hear the weakness in her defense after everything that had been implied. "You didn't have to say it outright," David snapped. "You just had to plant the seeds. Lead me with your questions. That's how this game works, isn't it?" Kelly's composure finally cracked. Her voice rose. "That is not how this works, David. That's not who I am, and that's not what this show is about. I'm sorry if my questions upset you, but I refuse to be painted as some kind of predatory journalist when all I wanted was an honest conversation." David sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "Well, congratulations. You've got your moment. I'm sure your audience will find it very entertaining. They'll talk, they'll speculate, they'll chew on this like gossip for weeks." He began ripping the mic from his shirt with sharp, angry movements. "But I'm done. Done with this interview. Done pretending this kind of journalism is acceptable." "David, please," Kelly pleaded, her voice breaking now. "Don't walk away like this. We can fix this. We can clarify. There's nothing to clarify." David cut her off, his tone final. "You've made your position clear, and I've made mine. The only thing left is to walk away." And with that, David Boreanaz turned his back on Kelly Clarkson. His footsteps echoed across the silent studio floor as he disappeared through the backstage exit, leaving behind a stunned audience, a shaken host, and one of the most explosive walk-offs in daytime television history. The cameras lingered on Kelly, standing alone in the wreckage of her own set, the silence in the room heavier than applause or outrage. The audience didn't know whether to clap, gasp, or simply sit frozen, waiting for someone to tell them what to do next.